Okay.
Do I look dark or not?
Let me see. No, you look fine.
You look fine.
Yeah,
A little
okay.
tad dark, but you look fine.
Well, I got an overhead light I can turn on. I didn't know how it came across.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and do that?
That better?
Okay.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Steve Sabadeski, BuyUBuzz.com, and today I know everybody's sort of TV weary. I know I am, and this is the day after the big election, November 4th. So today's November 5th, and on a Google Hangout today, we have Lauren Shahardy and Jim Brown. Jim is a former Louisiana State Senator, Secretary of State, and Insurance Commissioner. Also, he writes a weekly column for Bayou Buzz and nationally, and he has a syndicated radio program. Lauren Shahardy is the former assessor of Jefferson Parish, a political analyst and an attorney. And guys, big day for Republicans, both in Louisiana and nationally. So, Lawrence, why don't you tell us, in terms of Louisiana, what do you mean? What do you think this means for, say, the U.S. Senate race?
Well, Steve, every race is a new race, and certainly with a runoff in the Senate race, it's a brand new race. So you have to say that first and foremost. But given the vote that Senator Landrieu got, what Congressman Cassidy got, and the vote that Rob Maness got, when you look at the votes, you have to say that Congressman Cassidy appears to be in the driver's seat. When you take his vote and Colonel Maness's vote and add it together, it's well over 50%. And it's reasonable to assume that if everybody who voted for those three candidates shows up at the polls again on December 6th and votes their philosophy, you would assume that Colonel Maness's vote would go to Congressman Cassidy. So he has the edge going into this runoff. That doesn't mean he's automatically going to win, but it does give him an edge. This campaign is going to be interesting to see exactly how both Congressman Cassidy and Senator Landrieu motivate Louisiana voters to get to the polls and to vote for them. It's going to be interesting to watch how they accomplish that.
Yeah, it really will be. Jim?
Well, I certainly agree with Lawrence's analysis. Almost 60% of the voters did not agree to vote for their 18-year U.S. senator, and then Mary has some problems involving the fact that she touts that she is the chairman of the Energy Committee. Well, she's no longer chairman because the Republicans have taken over that committee, have taken over control of the Senate. So it's a real uphill fight for her. Traditionally, in a runoff situation, you're not going to have quite the high turnout, but Republicans traditionally, and I'm speaking as former Secretary of State, will vote at a higher number than Democrats. So her best shot was in this last election yesterday. I don't think she has the momentum, quite frankly, to push that turnout any higher than it is, and it's not going to be, quite frankly, quite as high. She's got a real uphill fight, both because of her own making and because of what's happening nationally. I was watching a lot of the morning shows this morning, and the prognosticators, the pundits, are stunned at how big the Republican victories were, not just as far as the U.S. Senate, but the House of Representatives, the highest number that the Republicans have ever held in the U.S. House of Representatives since 1946, more governors than they've ever had. So you go across the board, it's been a Republican year. We're a red state, heavy Republican state. Barack Obama is not popular at all. Incumbents are not at their highest level right now. Most of the victories were new people coming into the Senate, not people that were reelected. And so you put all that together, and Mary Landrieu has a real uphill battle if she stays in this runoff. I assume she will, and that's the other question, too. What will the Democrats do? She's not relevant to control of the U.S. Senate, so will they probably spent most of their money. Will they go out and raise millions more to try to save her when the vote's not that relevant to begin with? So a lot of uncertainty that will shake out more in the next weeks to come, but when it all's said and done, the odds are very much against her being reelected.
Have to agree, and that's pretty much what I was thinking too. And you know, I was wondering if she was going to get over 40%, 41%. Bayou Buzz had a poll actually, and we hit it almost on the number. It was 43-40, Landrieu ahead of Cassidy. So I think we were very, very close compared to, you know, so many other polls. But yeah, I mean, I think both y'all definitely are hit the nail on the head, and that is that how does she motivate? How does she motivate people to get out there? How, you know, and or National Democrats going to be able to raise the money for her? At this point in time, the Republicans, if they include Louisiana, can have 55 states, assuming Alaska and Virginia go the Republican way. So is there a big difference between 54 and 55, or 45 and 46? And so what's the real value proposition for, say, Republicans in Louisiana to beat Mary Landrieu? And also, what's the big motivation for the Democrats to keep Mary Landrieu? Lawrence?
Well, the motivation for Republicans is simply this, that the more Republican votes that they have in the Senate means they need fewer Democratic votes to break a filibuster. And of course, vice versa. On the side of the Democrats, the more Democrats they have, they make it much easier for them to have a filibuster over an issue or a piece of legislation that they don't want to pass. So there is some motivation there to elect one of our own, depending on which side you're on. What is going to be interesting is not just what the outside groups do with regard to this race, but you know, you look at the message of both candidates. Bill Cassidy and Rob Maness both went after Barack Obama. I mean, that was the central theme of their campaign against Barack Obama. Senator Landrieu's campaign theme was to try to show the good that she has done for Louisiana. When you look at the vote last night, what sold? What sold was not what I did good for Louisiana, but an anti-Barack Obama message. And so I think the bottom line of all this is voters are very unhappy with the status quo. They don't like what's going on in Washington. That's why Republicans did so well nationwide. I believe that's one of the reasons why Republicans did so well in Louisiana last night, and why I believe that Senator Landrieu is going to have to try to come up with another message to convince voters to come to her, because I do believe that the anti-Washington, anti-Obama feeling is still there, and it's going to be there throughout this runoff.
Jim?
The thing I would add on that, too, is that if the race had been a little more in Landrieu's favor, if she'd been 47 to 42 in the lead, there'd have been more motivation to hang in there for her. And what you're going to find as we analyze this whole thing is that Bill Cassidy is not going to win this election. Mary Landrieu is going to lose this election. I was on the phone, you know, I'm from North Louisiana, on the phone with a number of friends in local races, judgeships, district attorneys races throughout the state. And we got talking about the U.S. Senate race, and they were saying and these are key elected officials. These are judges, district attorneys, mayors, and they've said that they've not personally seen Mary Landrieu in years. In years, they're saying. And the Retail Politics, a column I wrote last week on Bayou Buzz, Steve, where I talked about the importance of just not doing it all through TV. She did this massive TV buy. I think Landrieu spent right at $20 million in her race. Cassidy did the same thing, but he had the anti-Barack Obama going with him. And so Mary really needed the retail politics. Didn't see a lot of sheriffs, for example, assessors, local courthouse crowd endorsing Mary this time. Well, she didn't really go in and ask them and organize it. And as a consequence, she lost that 3 or 4 points, number one. The second thing I'd like to, let's see, Oh, the other thing I thought was her theme. You know, you saw her TV spots, and she said, "I'm the one that salvaged the insurance program so your flood insurance rates go down, and I got all this money from Katrina, and I did this." Well, you know, no one member of Congress gets that many things, and I think that it plays into what you said, Steve. You just can't say you're bringing home the bacon. I think the better line would have been saying, look, we need cooperation of Democrats and Republicans, and I can work across the aisles. I did so that we all brought home the bacon. We all got flood insurance rates down, working with your governors, and, you know, I'd have brought them all back into the mix, because it's just not believable that Mary Landrieu by herself saved the wetlands and got us all these benefits. And I think it was just overhype on her part. I think I would have built a cooperative message of those who were moderate, who saying, okay, yes, I'm pretty much for the Republicans, but Mary makes a good point. She's willing to work across the aisle. That just didn't come across, Steve.
Right, right. I certainly agree with that. So I guess to me, one of the major issues is whether or not this is an election against Barack Obama in terms of the runoff. Is that going to be? Is Cassie going to be able to take advantage of the anti-Obama feelings during the month of December, November, December, I should say? Obviously, Republicans have will have a lot more control. So how much of this anger towards Obama do you think is going to transfer over to this election?
Well, Steve, I think that the total tone of Washington, which I believe in Louisiana is being represented by Barack Obama, is going to be there. I think the anti-Obama vote is going to turn out on December 6th. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. Those voters are there. They're tired of what they see in Washington. They want to change. And what they're mad about are these national issues. You know, things like Obamacare, health care, what's going on with immigration or not going on with immigration, with the Ebola crisis, what's going on with ISIS. People are just concerned. They're concerned about the economy. And when things aren't going well, people blame the leadership, and the leadership, obviously in Washington, is the president, and that's the one person that voters in each state can focus their frustration at. And if their senator is someone who has followed the same path as that leader, that they don't care for what they've done, they're going to take it out on that senator or that congressman, for that matter. But they're going to take it out on somebody, and I think that's what you saw last night in Louisiana, and I also believe that's what you saw across the country in those Senate races that Republicans did so very well in. There's just anger and frustration with Washington. And let me add one other thing. If Republicans think that this is some sort of mandate to go way out to the right and come up with an extreme agenda to the right, they'll be sadly mistaken. This is not that, because the public's not happy with Congress either. So the burden now is going to be on the Republicans in Congress to come up with an agenda that the American people can support. If they don't, then you're going to see the Democrats hold on to the White House in 2016 and possibility of retaking the Senate in 2016 as well.
Sure. Already the Tea Party has, the National Tea Party movement has already sent out notices to the Republicans saying that, okay, we helped you, now we expect you to really strongly consider our agenda. So I'm just wondering whether or not they're overplaying it already. As I understand it, these candidates who won, these new U.S. senators, they're not the Tea Party stripe. They're more traditional, conventional Republicans, more in the middle. Is that your understanding, guys?
That's my understanding.
I guess the only concern I have, and I don't know, I'm thinking this through, and in fact, I'm thinking about writing about it this morning, Steve, to be on Bayou Buzz tomorrow. Lawrence is right. Congress is so unpopular. I think I saw a poll. Favorability in Congress is 9%. Herpes has 10% favorability. So you can see that they're at a very, very low ed. But you pick up the Times-Picayune today, every incumbent wins hands down as far as your congressman outside of the Landrieu campaign. Overwhelming victories by Steve Scalise and go right up the river and right up to North Louisiana. So you're going to see about 90% of members of Congress getting reelected again who are running for reelection. And so if there's such a bitterness, and if Congress, what they're saying is, we hate Congress and hate the president, but our guy, oh, we love our guy. Well, sure. I'm just wondering if that's not a factor that you've gotten gerrymandering to the point where the extremes are on either side, and maybe there's a big middle ground, but that middle ground doesn't have a voice, because if you're in a strong Republican district, those people want extremes. They want to fight to the tooth. They want to fight to the nail. I saw same on the left. There was an article in Politico yesterday that a lot of the more left-leaning groups turned away from Mary Landrieu because she was trying to play it both ways, trying to play left and right. Remember the marijuana question in the earlier debate? She says, well, she's against marijuana for those in need, physically in need. Well, the two Republicans say, no, we ought to have that if someone's in great pain.
Plus gay rights. The issue of gay rights. The issue of gay rights during the second debate. Her position was that her personal feelings towards, say, gay marriages have evolved, but she would honor the Louisiana Constitution amendment.
Well, she's trying to have
there was a similar situation.
Well, she's trying to have it both ways, and the problem is the way the districts, particularly in the House districts, are put together, voters don't want you to have it both ways. They either want you to be strongly conservative, or if you're in the Richmond district down in New Orleans, much more to the left, much more Democratic. So as a consequence, you've got kind of this catch-22, and people don't like Congress, but we love our congressman, and so it looks to me like we're going to have some more stalemate. If the Republican Congress passes any legislation, you're not going to get a 2/3 majority to override the president. He'll be able to veto it, and I unfortunately see a lot of stalemate continuing. But my point is, and I'm kind of thinking of this as we're talking, if these congressmen are so popular in their individual districts, does the public really care? Maybe the public doesn't mind all this stalemate. They hate Congress because it's Washington, D.C., it's Barack Obama, it's all that group up there in Washington, the lobbyists. But my guy is reflecting my views. And so you got kind of a dichotomy there that's pretty hard to explain, but may show more gridlock for the next couple of years.
Sure. Now, North Louisiana, they actually decided to kiss off the congressman kissing congressman. And as I understand it, the Mayo, who is the mayor of Monroe, is in a runoff with is it Dasher? I don't know who won that election.
Abraham.
Abraham. Okay, so Dr. Abraham. I haven't checked this morning. So Dr. Abraham. Dasher actually did pretty well from before I decided to go to sleep. So now that's I mean, obviously you had a congressman who actually did lose. Now he lost, I think, because of he had his own issues after the scandal.
That would be are we ready for a little trivia right here, you two?
Sure.
A fellow in 1978 in the 5th Congressional District up there in Congress, the congressman was Jerry Huckabee. Who was his major opponent that came within 100 votes of beating him? You're looking at him. It was
Jim Brown.
I was about to say that. I really was. Only because I think he told me, yeah.
So I know that district pretty well, and Jamie Mayo is an African-American who is the mayor of Monroe. He got in the runoff because he coalesced a good Democratic and African-American vote, but he's peaked out at that stage. So the 5th District is conservative, it's Republican. Dr. Abraham is a veterinarian. He's spending his own money in the race. He's kind of beating up on the establishment, kind of an outsider, and by about 2,000 votes, he edged out Dasher, who is the Duck Dynasty guy. He's related to the family, and they went all out for him. But they'll all coalesce around Abraham, and it will be a stunner if, and you're right, that incumbent didn't win, but another Republican, more conservative, quite frankly, is going to take his place when they have this runoff coming up here in a few weeks.
Now, the other congressional election is Governor Edwards. And he is in a real fight for his life. Lawrence, why don't you tell us about that particular race?
Well, again, you know, the race that former Governor Edwards is in, he too was able to coalesce the traditional Democratic base and probably played off of the efforts of the Landrieu campaign to turn out the traditional Democratic base. So he benefited greatly from that, and he'll benefit from it in the runoff in December. But that said, again, you know, this is a conservative state, it's a conservative district, and the greater likelihood is that his Republican opponent, Garrett Graves, will end up winning that seat simply because he's the Republican and his opponent is a Democrat. And it's also interesting up in that northeast corner of the state, Congressman McAllister did not lose because of what he did in Washington. He lost because of what he did back home as the kissing congressman. So, you know, it was an issue totally outside of Washington that cost him his job. If that incident had never happened, I suspect he probably would have had at worst token opposition and would have won last night with a pretty decent vote. So, you know, it's sometimes politicians screw up, and when they screw up, a lot of times they screw up really bad, and that's what happened in that case. But I do think that Governor Edwards is going to be on the short end come December.
Yeah, so, you know, so do I. My question is, if you're Governor Edwards, are you going to run? Are you going to run for re-election in the primary, the second primary? I mean, how's he going to raise money? I mean, he didn't do very well if you think about it. What, he ended up with high 20s, low 30s.
30% in that 20.
Yeah, I mean,
about 30%.
I mean, that's not very good. I mean, in fact, that's pretty horrible. And so he's in his high 80s, and he's running against a young Republican with a lot of experience in Washington, a lot of experience down here, able to raise a lot of money. You know, who in the world is going to contribute money to him in that losing cause?
Well, he had trouble raising money in the primary, and when you look at even in the Senate race, you know, Senator Landrieu really maxed out as best she could on the Democratic base. And when you look at the field of candidates, there was no one to drag votes away from her of any consequence. She really had no challenge for the Democratic votes. The Republicans did, between Cassidy and Colonel Manus. In that race, it's the same thing. Governor Edwards had no drain on his Democratic vote to speak of. Republicans had a huge drain because everybody else was a Republican. So you've got to believe that in that race, it's going to be very difficult. Even if Governor Edwards could raise money, it's going to be very difficult for him to win that race in a runoff.
Jim, you know, I'm thinking about the election between Edwards and Romer when Romer became governor. And Edwards, after losing the general election, he dropped out. He knew that he was not going to be able to win. Now, why would he decide to stay in a race now? And likewise, and I know people are going to get angry with me here, but you know, Mary Landrieu doesn't look very good right now. You know, her main argument has been defeated. We all agree that she has she has a tough race, and she can only hope that she can somehow garner more of people to come out to vote, and only hope that the Republicans become complacent. So if she can't raise as much money, and certainly Republicans can throw money down here, and the third-party groups can do so, is she going to pull an Edwards in like Edwards did with Romer?
I think you raised several issues there, Steve. I think there's more of a chance of Landrieu maybe pulling an Edwards than Edwards doing it again. In 1987, in the governor's race, Edwards was the governor, number one. He held the seat. And number two, he was not leading. He was behind Romer, a complete unknown. And Romer really had not spent that much money. So as a consequence, I think he saw the writing on the wall. I don't think, I'll tell you what, I weighed from the very beginning. The same arguments we're making as to why Edwards cannot win this election, we could have made 4 months ago when he decided to run this election. Nothing is new out here. I think here's the difference. Back then, he knew he couldn't win. He was young. He still had a life to come back, as he proved, to come back and win another term as governor. This time around, you know what? I don't think he cares, Steve. I think that at 87, he is relishing the fact that wherever he goes, he gets mobbed by people, whether they're going to vote for him or not. He gets lots of attention. He's selling books. He's in a heyday on his rehabilitation tour. I think he's got a young son and kids, and he wants to make a legacy that he went out as a very popular guy. And if he wins one or he loses one at this stage in his life, I don't think he cares, because if he's got any reservations now about the runoff, those same reservations are there when he ran for this office to begin with, knowing he had an uphill fight. Now, Landrieu's in a different situation. This is kind of an all-time deal for her. If it was not such a major race, I think she would consider not running, rather pulling out of the race and just shutting it down. I think a lot is going on in terms of discussions with the National Party, the Senatorial Campaign Committee, the National Democratic Party. Those discussions are going to take place over the next couple of days, and they're going to have an influence on this thing, because she's, Cassidy, in spite of the fact that they don't need Cassidy's vote, 2016 comes up, and there's twice the number of Republicans on the ballot that are going to be at risk. So this thing could flip around 2 years from now. So there's a lot in the mix here to where if Cassidy can really have the money, will Landrieu stay in? Will the Democrats actually back her up nationally, put that money in down here? If they do, I think she'll go ahead and roll the dice and take a shot, not go out as a quitter. But if she doesn't have that backup, she may decide, look, I got this $2 million home in Washington. I can become a big shot lobbyist and enjoy the good life. So I think we're going to see a lot of soul searching over the next few days for her to make that final decision. Edwards, I think, is in. He's loving it. And the day after the election's over, assuming he loses, he'll be back out there shaking hands and selling books again. That's just kind of his reason to be, if you will. Whole different scenario with Mary Landrieu.
Lawrence?
I think Governor Edwards is having the time of his life. I think he's enjoying it. He's traveling around the district with his wife, talking to different groups. People come up to him. They stand in line to shake his hand. They want their picture taken with him. He's still the celebrity that he was when he was governor. He's still very popular with a lot of people. They still like him. Now, obviously, they didn't vote for him. 70% or so of the people in that district didn't vote for him, but he's having a good time, and he's I don't picture him going anywhere except heading toward December 6th. I'd be surprised though if Senator Landrieu did not take this to the end. A race for the United States Senate has far more implications than just what happens in Louisiana. We in Louisiana are looking for a senator who's going to represent us on all the issues. But from the standpoint of Washington, they're looking for votes. They're looking for power. They're looking for the ability to control the agenda and to control their programs. There is a reasonable chance that in 2016 this could reverse. You could very easily see Republicans losing some seats in 2016 because they're going to be just the opposite. It's going to be a lot of Republicans that are going to be up for re-election as opposed to Democrats. It was the opposite this time in the election yesterday. So if you subscribe to that idea that, hey, look, 2016 could reasonably be a different day, a different outcome, that one extra vote with Mary Landrieu in the United States Senate could be the difference between 50-50 and, 51-49. So, I just don't picture her not running this to the end.
The other thing I might throw in there, the backing what Lawrence is saying, is that let's assume she says, like, I can't win this thing, I think I'm just going to shut it down. That has national implications. It shows the Democrats are quitters and that they've given up, if you will. So they're probably, even if she runs and loses, there's probably the fact that she goes down swinging and fighting, there's some value there for the Democrats all across the country. So there's probably going to be some pressure on her to hang in there and fight it out to the end, even though realistically they know she's got a really huge uphill fight.
Uphill? She, at this point in time, I mean, there are no, or at least in the upcoming U.S. Senate, there are no Democratic senators from the South. Now, if she wins, she'll be the only one. So, yeah, I mean, should she be the person out there to try to beat down the wall? I mean, I don't know. She's not a quitter, far from. I know that. But I just don't know what her message is going to be. And that's the thing that I just really wonder about, and if she can't get the money, and if the Nationals are not going to generate the money for her, then, does she want to go out losing 30, 40 points?
Well, I don't think if Senator Landrieu were to lose, I don't think it'll be anything like that. I think it'll be much closer than that. But again, it has national implications. Now, we're sitting here speculating on what the thought process is of people in Washington who certainly can be off the wall sometimes. And of course, that's why the public is so upset. But no, I just don't see a scenario where she leaves this contest. I just don't see that happening.
Did we lose Lawrence?
Looks like
okay. I'm sorry, Lawrence?
I'm still here.
Okay, go ahead. So you don't see it happening?
I don't see it happening. She's a very capable politician. She's a very capable campaigner, maybe a better one than Congressman Cassidy. But I do agree with, I think, what you said and what Jim has said. What's her message going to be? That's going to be the problem. And I don't think it's going to be enough to say what you said in the primary, because you said it, and it didn't work.
It didn't work. I just got an email from her, at least from her campaign, and it was an anti-Cassidy website. And I didn't go to the website, but I looked at the email, and it was basically the same message about Cassidy going into the runoff that she was trying to get out there going into the jungle primary. So I don't know. What is the message? Last question, Bobby Jindal. What's going to happen to Bobby? Where's Bobby? I mean, Bobby was down in Florida when all this was happening. He came up for air, I think, last week when he took on Mary Landrieu's statement about race. And so I'm just wondering, is he, now that this is sort of, we have some kind of idea as to how Congress is going to shape out, and the governors and legislators for the next 2 years, is he going to jump in now, or is he going to wait till say the beginning of next year to make that decision?
I think Jindal's this morning is, I'm not sure he's all that happy about these huge Republican victories. All of a sudden you've got Scott Walker up in Wisconsin, John Kasich in Ohio. You've got a number of bright Republicans. So, hey, wait a minute, I won real big. Maybe I better look at that presidential race. It would have been in Jindal's interest for their Democrats to do much better and for him to have be that fighter when some of the others had kind of slunked back into their states and barely won and bruised up, and he could be the fair-haired boy. There's lots of fair-haired boys in the Republican Party out there right now.
Sure.
And as a consequence, that does not bode to Jindal's interest. Here's a guy who's got a favorability that's the lowest of any governor, that I can recall in my lifetime, who has just been a disaster back home, and he's kind of Don Quixote running around the country trying to endorse this person. Hey, here I am. Recognize me. I'm from Louisiana, he just got. I don't see the credibility building. I don't see a lot of favorability coming from the national mood. And if I were Jindal, I'd get back home and jump into the Cassidy race and try to bend some fences back here. But he lives in a different world and off on his whole different agenda. And, I've never been able to figure the guy out. So I always felt like the way you build a huge base is to say, look at the good job I've done at home and have something to build on. He's chosen not to do that. So Steve, like I say, he's the Don Quixote of a present politics, and because of the Republican victories, he's kind of backed down a little bit now because he's one of a bunch now in there trying to get attention. Mitt Romney coming back. Paul Ryan's been all over the news. Are they going to come on back? This is going to be a very, very crowded field, and I'm afraid Jindal's going to get lost in the shuffle.
Lawrence?
Well, let me say first that Bill Cassidy's done fine without an endorsement from Governor Jindal. So if I'm Bill Cassidy, I'm not looking or chomping at the bit to get an endorsement from the governor. The governor's popularity is low. I think whatever benefit that Congressman Cassidy has from the wing of Louisiana voters that may still be left supporting Bobby Jindal, he probably got already in the election, or Colonel Manus got it. And those votes are very likely to go over to Bill Cassidy. So I would not be looking or soliciting an endorsement from the governor. With regard to Bobby Jindal's future, I would recommend to him that he come home, that he stay home, and that he try to repair his image here in Louisiana and do and be the best governor that he can be for the remainder of his term, to try to improve himself so that when he leaves office, people have some positive feelings about him. Right now, the mood toward him, and I hate saying this because Bobby's been a friend, but it's not good. There are a lot of Republicans in this state who went to bat for Bobby Jindal both times he ran for governor and were there when he ran for Congress, who are very disappointed in it today. With regard to the outcome of the election yesterday, there's a whole new crop of potential presidential candidates now, like Scott Walker, like John Kasich from Wisconsin and Ohio. So that is not boding well to start piling up with more and more potential candidates. Interestingly, the Democrats are the ones who are going to be looking at a lack of candidates. I mean, they've lost governorships, don't really have a lot on the horizon. So it's going to be interesting to see when 2016 rolls around and we get to the caucuses and primaries, how all this shakes out. But if I were Governor Jindal, I would come home and work very hard to repair my image back home in Louisiana and leave office popular rather than questionable.
One more thing, Steve,
Sure.
that I could throw in that we haven't talked about, and I don't have any information knowledgeable about this.
You better not say what I was going to say, but go on.
Well, I want to bring up Colonel Manus. If this had been a normal state to where, we're not normal in a number of ways, but assuming we would have the two-party state where there would not be the open primary, I think Manus would have done much, much better against Cassidy, number one. And number two, the guy's an attractive guy, no scandals, no ties, not really a politician. With he's just run a good statewide race. He's got his truck, and a lot of people like the guy. I like the guy. I've been impressed with this campaign. I think he might want to take a look at a statewide race, so something like lieutenant governor, something along that line. I'm not sure that he's out and done at this stage. He's got a lot of goodwill out there. and it'll be interesting to see if he wants to capitalize on that will with 2015, these statewide races right around the corner.
So what I certainly agree with that. Although he did have what 13-14%, and that's not putting the world on fire. But I'm just thinking, and I know that Bobby Jindal said no, he's only interested in if he were to run for elective office, only interested in the office of president. But there's going to be a U.S. Senate seat that's going to be vacant, and we're only, what, 2 years away. Am I right?
Have you genuflected to the new governor already and said that he's a shoe-in? Is this Steve? Is this something that Lawrence and I don't know about? Are you endorsing David Vitter for governor, assuming he's going to win? I mean, no. I'm certainly not. No, you guys would be the first to know. The point I'm making is that who's going to fill David Vitter's seat? Well, David Vitter's going to fill David Vitter's seat if he's the governor.
No, I'm talking about U.S. Senator.
Well, I'm saying if he gets elected governor, he appoints his replacement. So he can appoint his replacement. And he ain't going to appoint Bobby Jindal. There's no love between those two.
Right. But 2016 is an election.
Right.
Okay. And it doesn't necessarily, I mean, just because you're appointed doesn't mean that you're going to be able to win. And if Jindal looks and sees, wait a minute, I cannot win this presidential election, but I can if I'm go back to my roots, I might be able to win that U.S. Senate race. I'm just throwing it out there.
I never discounted that. I thought he might even take a look at it that this time around against Landrieu, which should. And you're right, depending on who he appoints, assuming that all that falls into place, that Vitter is elected governor, he appoints someone, not Jindal, but Jindal still has a shot to run. But I think we go back to what Lawrence said. He's got some bridges to build. I mean, everybody knows Bobby Jindal, just like everybody knows Edwin Edwards. But when you as far as the negative, Jindal's got a huge negative out there. A lot of people just feel like he really betrayed the state and just abandoned the state. So as a consequence, he's got some huge fence building to mend, and he just seems so bullheadedly on this Don Quixote track of Jocelyn windmills, no matter what the situation is. I don't know who's advising him, but the best thing he could do today is pick up the phone, call Lawrence Shahardy, and say, hey, I kind of heard you on the hangout with Steve and Jim, and you're right. Come on up here and give me some advice. That's the best thing that guy could do. So I'll wait for your call, Lawrence, to tell me you just hung up the phone from Bobby Jindal. Okay?
Don't stay by your phone too long.
and what I'll do is I'll get Mary to give Lawrence a call too.
Now look, let's throw the scenario in, since this will be a little teaser for our next hangout. Let's assume that Mary Landrieu loses. Is she going to be a Washington lobbyist in that big $2 million home, or will she come back and look at governor of Louisiana, running for governor, or that U.S. Senate race you're talking about, Steve? Is her future done? Probably so, because of the red state scenario, but is she over and through? So we may be talking about her future coming up at a future hangout.
Well, look, she might run for the U.S. Senator of Connecticut.
That's right. or Alabama or Missouri.
That's right. I mean, she has all kind of options. Guys, listen, thanks a lot, and we'll do it again real soon. Take care.
Look forward to it. Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
Take care.
Take care.
Okay, so we are